Alright, so this is 100% something new for me. I've never done anything like this before. Maybe in your other classes you have, I'm not sure. Fun backstory though, I did all of this one time already with my microphone on mute, and when I finished it, and it was 14 minutes and however long, I went to play it back and got nothing. So that was awesome. You can imagine how happy I am right now re-recording this. That's just me being real with you. So today is kind of a tie-up day for this Byzantine Empire unit. We have already talked about the contributions of Justinian. We're going to add one more to that today. And then yesterday your focus was on the Great Schism, looking at what separated the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. And today some of the major issues between the two of them and some of the issues that they had in the past. So like I said, today's really going to be used as a tie-up day for some of the loose ends for this Byzantine Empire unit and how they end up influencing the Russians, which is really a main piece to this. So we've kind of already talked about, prior to today, some of the Byzantine artwork. We've mentioned the idea of mosaics. It was actually on the web quest from the first day. And really quickly, while I initially have your attention here, you're going to be on the back of page 3. There is a open space. There's not a fill-in-the-blank style notes for this, so keep that in mind. This information is important. There's something from each one of these slides. Actually, 2 of them. There are multiple things that you'll need to know for the test next Friday. So make sure that you're doing your part to actually complete this. But the Byzantine Empire, when you look at their artwork, what you're going to see over and over and over again is a Christian influence. And that makes sense when you think about how Christianity influenced the Romans. It infiltrated their entire day-to-day life, especially after the contributions of somebody like Constantine, who legalized Christianity in the 300s. So we're now in the 500, 600 time period. Just 300 years later, and Christianity is a fixture in the lives of these people who assumed that they were Roman. We call them the Byzantine Empire today, but again, they thought they were Roman. On top of mosaics being used, small pieces of glass or stone to make images, another popular art form was the idea of icons. So think of it like this. People in the Roman Catholic Church would hold a picture of maybe like the Virgin Mary or St. Peter or St. Paul, and they would pray, and while they were holding that picture, what they believed was happening is that person was going to God on their behalf. Now, was that really happening? Probably not, but they continued using that practice for a long time, and that's one of the things that broke up the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church. So icons, mosaics, make sure you have both of those things. But a major idea here is when you look at Byzantine artwork, what you're going to see is a highly Christian influence. I'm going to give you guys about 15 more seconds. Anything you don't have, make sure that you write it down, and then I will move on to the next slide. Alright, so we've talked about the Justinian Code. We talked about how Justinian reconquered former Roman territory. So let's add another contribution to our Byzantine Emperor Justinian, unless you want to count him marrying a prostitute as a contribution, but that's really not a contribution. One of his greatest contributions, and this was architecturally, was this church that you see there. It's known as the Hagia Sophia. It looks like Hagia Sophia, but it's the Hagia Sophia. It means the Church of Holy Wisdom. You're going to want to make sure that you have that written down. Hagia Sophia means the Church of Holy Wisdom. And this church you would find in Istanbul today. Obviously, it was in Constantinople then. And what I think is cool about this picture is you can actually see the Bosporus Strait behind the church. When you're looking at this building, obviously some of the first things that stand out are those 4 towers. Those are called minarets. They were not initially there. They were added by the Muslims when it eventually became a Muslim mosque. Today it's a museum, but for a time period it was a Muslim mosque, so that's why those were there. But the major architectural feature here is the dome top. The Byzantines obviously incorporating Roman ideas. They consider themselves Roman. At the time this was built, and for about the next 400 years, this was the largest dome in the world. It was actually 2 domes, and you can kind of see in this area here, and on the reverse side, that was 1 dome, and then obviously the dome top. So it was an incredible feat of engineering. It brought lots and lots of public jobs, made Justinian very, very popular. But again, once the Byzantine Empire was conquered by the Ottoman Turks, it became a Muslim mosque, and today serves as a museum. So again, the Hagia Sophia, it means the Church of Holy Wisdom. It was built by the Emperor Justinian. All right, well, I'll go back for just a second and give you guys 15 more seconds to get whatever you need from this slide. All right, so here's the main part for today, talking about how the Byzantine Empire influenced Russia. All right, so if you take a look at the purple area here, this is the Byzantine Empire. We've got Asia Minor, we've got the area where Constantinople is. If we kept going to the east, we'd eventually get to Greece, and then over to Rome. But that's not where we're focused on right now. What we're focused on is the Black Sea and the territory that's just north of the Black Sea. Just north of the Black Sea, there were a group of people known as the Slavs. And what you're probably thinking right now is, what you mean is slaves. But nope, I don't mean slaves. I don't mean slaves yet. We'll come back to that later. But the Slavs lived just north of the Black Sea. And in the 900s, they began traveling through these rivers, which you can see all over this territory, which today is Russia, through the Black Sea to the city of Constantinople. Through cultural diffusion, and we've talked about that multiple times now, it's where one culture bumps off or rubs off on another, the Slavs would pick up many of the Byzantine ideas, specifically the idea of Orthodox Christianity. So here's where this is. Here's where the story really picks up. So the Slavs lived here, just north of the Black Sea, and then in this area, if you kept going up, you get to Sweden, Finland, Norway. We call this area Scandinavia. Well, a group of people you may know who lived in this area were the Vikings. The Vikings would float down these rivers because they were also great shipbuilders, and they would come in contact with the Slavic people. Here's the thing about the Slavic people. They had no written language. They had no government. They really had a very, very primitive lifestyle. So, as crazy as it sounds, the Slavs would ask the Vikings to rule over them. And the Vikings obviously said yes. But if you can remember what I said earlier, the Vikings eventually end up taking advantage of this, and the Slavs become their slaves. So where do we get the word slaves from? We get it from the word Slavs. But that's not where it stops. The Vikings and the Slavs eventually intermarry, okay? And out of this marriage of many Slavs and many Vikings, you get the people that live all in this area, the Russians, okay? The Russians live in this area, so that takes us back to Orthodox Christianity. What religion do you find most prevalent in Russia? Eastern Orthodox Christianity, still to this day. If you go to Russia, you're going to see Orthodox Christian churches with Orthodox Christian services. You could also go to Roanoke and find an Orthodox Christian church, but I don't think you're going to do that. So the Russians, through them being created by the Slavs and the Vikings, end up being heavily influenced by the Byzantine Empire. All right? So I'm going to give you guys 15 more seconds. Make sure you have everything you see on the right over here copied down. Maybe a headline of Byzantine culture influences Eastern Europe and Russia. And then we'll move on to get a little bit more specific with the Byzantine Empire and Russia. So I just told you guys that the Slavs had no written language, okay? And they wouldn't have a written language for quite some time until 2 Orthodox Christian missionaries named Saint Cyril and Saint Methodius decided that the Slavs needed to learn how to read and write. So to do this, they translated the Bible into a written language for the Slavs. It was known as the Cyrillic alphabet. So how did the Slavs end up adopting Eastern Orthodox Christianity? By it being the way they read and it being the way that they eventually learned how to write. That's important for today because if you are Russian, the alphabet you use is the Cyrillic alphabet. Okay? So to convert the Slavs, Saint Cyril and Saint Methodius had to translate the Bible into a language they made up, then had to teach the Slavs so the Slavs could read the Bible, and then because the Slavs and the Vikings became the Russians, the Cyrillic alphabet became the alphabet of the Russians. It's all tying together here, all right? It's all tying together. The idea of cultural diffusion. Byzantine Empire rubbed off on the Slavs. The Slavs became the Vikings, or the Slavs intermarried the Vikings and they became the Russians. And not only are the Russians Eastern Orthodox Christian, but they also use the Cyrillic alphabet. Make sure, again, you have this copied down. Give you guys about 8 more seconds. All right, final thing, and this kind of ties everything together. So what you see in the picture on the right, beautiful picture, are what are known as onion top domes. They really look like Hershey Kisses with really colorful wrapping. But these onion top domes are another example of cultural diffusion. Think about it from this perspective. Not only were the Russians influenced by Byzantine religion, them being Eastern Orthodox Christian, they were also influenced by Byzantine architecture. These domes are just a few architectural designs away from the dome you might see at the Hagia Sophia. Okay? So if you're looking at the text here, and again, you should be writing this down, along with the spread of Cyrillic language to the Slavic people, the religion of the Byzantines, which was Eastern Orthodox Christianity, spreads to the Slavs as well. Because of this, Russians are today Eastern Orthodox and write in Cyrillic. So the picture you see is St. Basil's Cathedral, and it is an example of cultural diffusion, because how did the Russians get this? By the Russians being the Slavs and the Vikings, and the Slavs being heavily influenced by the Byzantine Empire. Because they rubbed off on each other, you get a church that is Eastern Orthodox Christian with Roman or Byzantine domes as the major architectural feat. All right? So this is not our typical style of lecture. I wasn't up moving around, calling people out for not paying attention. My hands weren't going everywhere. I'm actually seated, made up a terrible word, seated at a desk in my house. And kind of interesting even trying to do this. But obviously it needed to get done. Some of the major takeaways for today, I'm going to do this really quickly. The Byzantines style of art, you see it in mosaics and in icons, namely mosaics. And adding another contribution to Justinian, other than just the Justinian Code and reconquering territory, also built the Hagia Sophia, which was the Church of Holy Wisdom. And then the whole idea of cultural diffusion with the Byzantine Empire impacting the Slavs, and then the Slavs becoming the Russians. Okay? So with the Russians, you have them using the Cyrillic alphabet, you have them using Byzantine architecture, and again, if you were to go to Russia today, what you would see are Eastern Orthodox Christian churches. Tomorrow we're going to pick back up. We're going to talk about Islam, and not necessarily a spread, but it's starting. Its major key player, Muhammad, and we'll look a little more into his life.